Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Hello and welcome to another episode in Harvesting Wisdom. I'm your host, Mike McMahon. Today I have as my guests Tim Goyette.
Yes.
And Taylor Perkins.
Yes.
Your name is a lot easier. I do screw up lots of names. But you guys are both with Chasse Building Team.
Yes.
I think that's the name of the company, or is it Chasse Developer?
Chasse Building Team.
Chasse Building Team. And your primary thing that you guys work on are schools. That's your specialty, right? And so we kind of tie in with you based on a lot of different factors, but one is that we do school gardens. We do shelter gardens and that sort of thing too, and we do diversified farming in Africa. But for the most part, you know, what we do with urban farming education is working with schools. And I have a construction company too, landscape construction and maintenance. So I'm familiar with some of the problems we have in construction right now, and that's hiring people. You know, we statistically know that there's less and less people going into STEM-related industry, which is, if you think about it, that's where the jobs are now and in the future. So the concept of us putting in STEM gardens is a direct way of influencing that. So we call it a STEM lab more than a STEM garden because there's so many different things you can learn. You can learn about water dynamics, you can learn about, you know, soils, and you can learn about the scientific method, you can learn about, you know, photosynthesis, you can learn about robotics or programming, and depending on what you do in these particular labs. And the biggest thing is to turn the kids on to getting that curiosity. And I don't know about you guys, I'll talk about your bio, but my undergraduate was in engineering, and I was not ready for that. I don't even know. My father told me, "Oh, you should be an engineer." No, probably not what I should have been. But I went through in the engineering school, and I always had an issue between abstract thought and concrete thought. Like, why am I having to learn about some of this? How am I ever going to use that in my life and that kind of thing? And I think with the STEM garden, it kind of answers that for kids. So it's an easy segue. Here's what you're doing now, and check it out. Here's the science behind those things that you can apply, and I think they get it. So I think that's the big thing we're doing. And I'll go really quickly through your bios, both educated. You have a degree in construction management. My son got a degree in construction management up in Seattle.
Perfect.
And does really well with it. And he originally started as pre-med, wrong choice for him. My daughter's a surgeon now, but he was not cut out for that. And I think construction's perfect. Plus, he's young. I mean, he's, you know, still late 20s. And I think because there's so few people getting in our industry, that someone who just shows up to work and thinks and has got a passion for it can do so well in our industry. And that's one of the things I talk to my buddies who are in the AGC and ALCA and all the different organizations we have, and everybody complains about jobs, but nobody really is doing anything about it. So it's great to see you guys in Chasse doing something about it. You're also certified lead, and I know that's not the easiest thing to get. Boy, there's a lot of hoops and a lot of things you got to do to be a lead person. And I'm going to ask you a little about that whole lead thing, right? You have put in a total from ground up about 8 schools, which is, you know, quite an accomplishment. And you can talk about those schools. I'm not going to list them because it would take me too long and I'll mess them up. And you do have a passion for STEM and STEAM. STEAM being the A for arts, which, you know, I think is also easy to tie into the things we're doing too. But Taylor, you're business development coordinator, and we talked about this a little bit. You are you're basically a client liaison. You're making sure the clients are happy, right? And they understand what your mission at Chase is and what your experience level is and what you guys do. So that's a huge job. I know I've finally got a good person after 34 years. I got like a really good business development person, and what a difference. You know, isn't it crazy? The same thing with my controller, and hopefully they don't hear this because I don't want to pat them on the back, too much. But my controller is finally, after all these years, stable and knowledgeable, no drama, really good at what. And my life is so easy with those two key positions, plus my general manager, who kind of runs things, right? So, I have a new life after.
So now you can do podcasts.
Well, I do podcasts. I'm in the middle of for 4 years, I've been working on books for composting, vermicomposting, urban gardening.
That's awesome.
So I got all that going on, which is the worst thing I could ever hope on anyone is to try to write a book, especially if you're not like the greatest writer in the world. So I've been on those, and then my other company is a soil company. So we do a large scale and small scale soil production. We do composting, vermicomposting, and then we blend. So we have 27 different products for the landscape industry, for turf and that kind of thing. But the idea here is that with all of these, there's a need for, more young people going into our profession and finding our profession is fun and fulfilling as we do. Maybe they look at us as boring. I don't know, but for me, I'm never bored with what I do.
Yeah. Well, and it's that exposure at a young age. It's not, I feel like when you expose these kids to that type of thing in high school, it's kind of too late. It's like, you gotta expose them to all these amazing career pathways earlier on.
Going through this to the second grade. Although I got to say I was a late developer, late bloomer. I'm still waiting to get out of puberty.
Yeah, right.
So, but you guys are both dedicated to promoting sustainable building practices. So tell me a little, what is the LEED thing? I see it everywhere, and I got a degree in the engineering department and in the architecture, but I'm neither. I'm just a business owner. But so what is this whole LEED thing? Why is that so important? What does it even mean?
So LEED is basically, it came about, really came to fruition about 20 years ago. And so construction inherently creates a lot of pollution. Also, it's hard on the workers that work in it. If you go back 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, asbestos, all those kind of things in the environment. And what LEED has done, it was kind of the tip of the spear in a lot of the sustainable building practices. And what it did is kind of organized a way to score buildings and really promote sustainable practices in buildings. And what that means, not only from, energy, also water, just being a healthy building. We all hear about, like, we go down to Home Depot and you see low VOC paint. 20 years ago, if you wanted to buy low VOC paint, you probably couldn't find it at Home Depot. And so it's just really what it did is it kind of really sped up this sustainable idea in the construction side, because construction it's pretty much responsible for a lot of the things that harm the earth. There's a lot of carbon that's produced from construction, a lot of water. And so one of the things that probably relates a lot to what you guys are always looking at, how do we reduce water usage? And LEED was kind of something that really spearheaded using low water fixtures, that in these buildings. So your buildings are way more efficient and not using a lot of that water that is, especially where we live, it's one of the most valuable resources. We're finding that it's probably, we're seeing water costs go up where we live, and I think it's really helped spearhead that.
Plus the energy in a building, right? So we have heat issues. So you're probably using materials
so energy
reflect and or.
Yeah, so one of the things right off the bat, it was like looking for high emissivity in the highly reflective materials. So they're looking for buildings that actually reflect the heat. And so
rather than get absorb the heat.
Yeah, so if you had a roof that was, a lot of us have roofs that are flat roofs and they're white as opposed to a black roof. And so just really kind of organize that idea. I remember when I actually got my accreditation like 20 years ago, and I just, I was kind of a young guy. I was in my 20s, and it just really organized. It was, I kind of did it for business purposes, but it's really been fun to be part of that movement because it just really, you've just seen it kind of go from 0 to 100, and it's just really important.
Do you see your clients embracing that, or the architects and engineers you're working with? Are there people who resist that, or is it pretty much everybody sees that it's a good thing?
I think our clients really embrace it. At first, it was probably the architects because they really were kind of the ones that were pushing.
They wanted the merit badge.
Yeah, they wanted the merit badge, and but I think what we found is these sustainable practices actually have a payback, and then they're actually, like when you put a roof on that's white and it reflects heat, then that roof is way more efficient, and you're using less money in Arizona to cool your buildings, and so people are seeing that payback, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I've been reading a bunch of books on sustainability. It seems like an overused word, right? But and now we're seeing sustainability officers at big corporations, and we kind of are seeing a bit of a shift politically. Years and years ago, the big corporations, the big bad corporations, were considered ultra conservative and money hungry and that kind of thing. Whereas now, I think there's a major drive from your big international companies to be more sustainable. And I've talked even to big investor groups who say that they won't invest unless it has, some sustainability element to it. And so the books that I've been reading talk about how they brought on a sustainability officer, and maybe the company when it first started was just trying to greenwash or, pretend that they were green. But then as they got into it, they realized that it was actually saving them money, a lot of money. It was reducing cost. And I think one of the ones, and I don't know if I can quote the name of the author, but he's talking about down in Mexico, Heineken has got, which is another crazy thing. They had like 250,000 people in Mexico. I mean, I think a Heineken is German beer, right?
Yeah.
But all these big corporations now own everything. There's 4 corporations that own all the liquor and the wine and everything in the world. So, and whether or not they're even producing Heineken there, or if they own Mexican companies, but this one lady was brought in, and she, went into the community, and the community wants them there because they employ. So they all have a paycheck. They're able to bring their family into a place where they can, they can live a decent life. But in a group discussion, they said, well, what do you guys like to see, or what do you think? And they said, well, geez, it'd be really nice if you didn't completely destroy the water in our river. And because now, the river is now reduced because you're using so much, and there's so much pollution in there. So she kind of tackled that, and I guess they really reduced the amount of water in the facility, which gives that facility like an extra 10 or 20 years of usable life, and made the community happy. So it is kind of a crazy thing how this whole sustainability thing is real. Sometimes you talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, whatever, but it's a real thing. And if you can embrace it and do it better than the other guys, which is what you guys are kind of getting that reputation as being able to do, better, build a better box than the rest of the people. Then I think it's really a great thing to specialize in or be known for, right?
Absolutely. It's very apparent in like higher ed too. Like ASU does a lot of LEED certified buildings.
Oh yeah, everywhere. It's almost like I said, if you want to do a project or if you want to get funding, you have to be on it.
Yeah,
you can't fake it
absolutely.
anymore. You can't just greenwash it or fake it anymore.
There's qualifications for everything. Yeah.
One of the crazy things I've seen, because I don't know anything really about education, I barely got myself through high school, graduate school, and whatever. But I look, and I was talking to Joe about this, who works for us at UFE, and like some of these places, like Levine, the schools are gorgeous. And I remember I did not go to a gorgeous school. I went to one that ended up, both the schools, high school and grade school, both closed. I mean, they were 100-year-old buildings and just, kind of nasty. And I go to these things and I'm like, my God, this is like a country club. So the buildings themselves really changed, I think, the environment to a point where maybe it makes the students more receptive. What's the concept? Is there any kind of statistic on?
I don't really know the statistic, but I really agree with what you were just saying, because I kind of think to some extent we're a product of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So if you're growing up in a nasty environment.
Yeah. Well, and I also think and I've talked to a lot of, district leadership over the years, and a lot of the schools that were built for students to become manufacturers, to work in manufacturing buildings. And so it was like, you go from here to here, you have a place. And
now we're in the information age, right? It's a whole different game.
The buildings are being designed to, stem creativity and connection and communication with one another. You see a lot of maker spaces now where kids get to work together and learn together. And so the information age has definitely changed. And the way buildings are designed have definitely changed, and the way you build is changed.
Right.
The
So
building,
it's really cool to see.
Yeah, and the buildings, these schools are kind of made, they're actually kind of emulating how we work in the real world. Mm-hmm. And so the work-centrics, we work in groups. So a lot of these students, they're building these facilities so they learn how to work in groups. And they
collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
They do group projects. And the whole STEM thing really fits in. It synergizes. Like, you plant that seed and you watch the plant grow, right, and maybe they go write about that in their English class. And so it's really project-based, and it's preparing them to be career ready.
It improves their conversational capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have guys who work for me that are engineers that really just, they're so rigid on, how they think or walk, that you can't ask them a simple question. And so opening them up is this, again, it's kind of a way to break things down, I think, with these, with the schools. One of the interesting things, and I know very little about it, but I asked Joe on this. This is an interesting setup, as schools are really population-based, right? So I didn't realize that. I mean, it makes sense, right? But as one particular district starts to blow up, it needs more schools, so you got to build more schools. Mm-hmm. And then another district, the population might be getting older, and there's less students in the schools, so they have to close the schools.
Yeah.
And the money, I was talking to one of the principals of a school like a week or so ago. I had her on the podcast, and she said money comes in waves. So I think we've got the institution part down. The buildings are really nice, and they're inviting. The next question is how do you sustain the education with that kind of volatility? And I don't know really the answer on that. And I guess other than stability and jobs and, people working in a particular area. Do you guys get involved ever with the closing of schools and demo? Do you do any demo at all?
Yeah, we from time to, so we work with all kinds of districts, and I was actually just on a meeting on Friday with the state, and they were talking about some districts are growing and some districts are declining, and it's really kind of random how it's happening. And
right.
And sometimes we're working with schools just to we're working with a school that actually has a declining district, but they're actually building a new facility because it's the right thing to do, because they still have a huge population, but their facilities aren't really right for what their curriculum that they're trying to build. And so what we're seeing is these newer facilities are more intentionally built.
Modular for the ability to
well, they're open.
Close down a little.
They're really open. Like the older schools, like I grew up in Mesa. The older schools in Mesa, they used to be a brick building almost, and it had doors on both sides. They're 100-foot long.
Hallway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so these facilities are like, they'll have a lab right next to their English class and they might have that type of setup. And so it's just really we're seeing all kinds of things like that. We're also seeing that I think districts, are working on trying to attract. They're struggling with getting the right amount of money to pay their teachers and attract those teachers. That's a huge thing.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Like, think about the problems we have in construction. Can you imagine, trying to recruit teachers on the salaries they're getting paid? And so,
Right.
I mean, there's all kinds of problems across the board on that we could talk for hours on.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It trickles down from the
But
top.
it is an increasing population in Arizona. Since I've been here, it's doubled twice, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So
And you see those areas.
pretty much something you can count on.
Totally. And you see the areas, the more urban areas or the rural areas increasing in growth, and the more city urban areas declining because of the expenses of living too. So you have to take that into consideration. Think of Queen Creek, or think of, I don't know what else, like even Whitman. They're growing so much. But you think of, a Paradise Valley or a Scottsdale, the average household, the average house in those areas is extremely expensive. And so there's
Sure.
those declining enrollments.
So with Chase, most big GCs, you coordinate a lot of subs. Do you guys do much self-performing work, or does that actually compete with your subs? How do you handle that?
So we kind of say you can't beat a guy at his own game.
That's true.
But, so we will self-perform something if we find a benefit to the client where it's something unique and, you can't find people to do it.
Right. It's cost effective
But, you got like these great firms that are just experts. We're really blessed in this state that we have a lot of great contractors.
we've had so much growth for so long, right? I always laugh when I see like an HOA or when they want to start their own landscape company. I'm like, oh my God, good luck. I would never, knowing what I know, I never would have gone into it. It's so volatile, so difficult, and the margins aren't that great, So, when I work with a new client, whatever that client is, I have money, it's like, okay, my bid's a little bit higher than the other guy. It's realistically, we're all bidding the same stuff. They either made a mistake or I did, and otherwise it's very quantifiable. The numbers should be pretty close. If you're taking a really low number, you should think twice about it.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't want to take the highest number, but in at the end of the day, we are somewhat commoditized, and I don't understand why anyone would try to get in the business, because in between projects, how do you afford to pay those people?
It's a scramble. It's kind of a random game that we play where you're just shuffling people around, and and I don't know how anybody could, like a homeowners association or anybody, could self-perform something like that if it's a large facility. Just keeping them busy all the time, it's not very efficient.
No, that's the whole point. Is if we're working on margins of 15% or whatever, and you've got a chunk of people in between things that are idle, or you're paying, vacation pay or whatever, and you're not an expert, right? That's a big part is these people aren't experts. And do you have a lot of union work or not much? Arizona's like not a union state.
We work with a couple contractors that have a union side, but
We're not.
we're not union, and most of our contractors aren't union.
Right.
We're right
I
to
think
work
that's
state.
Arizona, sure.
So
Right. Are you guys all over the state of Arizona then, or do you try to focus on these, the big core Maricopa County, which is where everybody lives anyway?
So we're born in Arizona. We work in Phoenix, Maricopa, the Valley area,
Have an office in Tucson.
but we do follow clients. We're all about our clients. We're 95% repeat customers. So what we're always trying to do is if a client wants to take us somewhere, we'll go there. We don't really leave the state, but we've gone to different places and work.
Yeah, I've left the state a few times, and it was a mistake. It was like
Yeah.
cost me a fortune, and it was just separated me more than I wanted to be. But interesting, we are starting another office again in Tucson because our clients are asking us to go down to Tucson because there's not, as many subs down there,
Right.
and the project sizes are smaller, so that's a different animal. But
And it's its own community. Tucson is very Tucson based. So if
Yes,
you
it
have an
is.
office in Tucson, it's Tucson.
exactly, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
and
why
I've,
it's like
I've
that's
often
that.
said that and I did a lot of big projects in Tucson years ago. 30 years ago, whatever. But I've often said that if you come from Phoenix as a contractor and you go down to market yourself in Tucson, you're better off saying that
not
you're
gonna
from
go well.
I'm from Al Qaeda. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As long as you're not a contractor from Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the crazy part of it. But no, I love the area down there because
Beautiful.
the vegetation is better, the climate is a little better, and I like the fact that they take more of the historic buildings and save them, and they're just more progressive in so many different ways. But so for me, I like it, and my daughter's works down there in the hospital, so for me to go down there, that's a good thing. How often are you? So now, are you on jobs with your job? You're kind of high up there. Are you on job sites, running the whole job, or are
No, I kind of help. I do a lot of the planning, and then I work with teams, and we just kind of manage it as we go through. I go out to jobs. I love going to jobs. That's why I got into this industry.
Yeah, we like being in the car.
Yeah, it's like, well, actually, like,
So
you
windshield.
know,
Live in the car
Yeah.
is what we do. Yeah.
yeah, you do feel like a trucker sometimes in this state when you're,
Well, you don't feel you're not working unless you're behind a windshield
yeah.
for some reason.
Yeah.
My generation, I'm used to like working in the car, like, cause we just travel,
Right.
And, but yeah, I'm out on jobs. That's why I got into this industry. I love engaging with the teams, working with the different trade contractors and construction, Chasse Building Team. It's kind of funny, the team part of it, our name, but construction is really a sport. When you have a hard project and
Oh, yeah.
you get to really engage with some good team members, and you feel like you're kind of racing to the end, and you all win or lose together, and
That's right.
it's a really a fun.
We used to be in the Construction Alliance out in Sun City. And the guy who ran that had a perfect way of saying it. And I'm like, because I asked him one time, why do you bother with an alliance? There's contractors everywhere. You can do whatever. And he said, Mike, it's like being in a horse race. You're only as good as the horse that takes you to the finish line. So they had loyalty to the subs, but then the loyalty went both ways, because we would look for things. Normally, if you're working with a GC that's only trying to, a lot of general contractors try to make money from their subs or make money from the owner because they have low margin, so they're trying to make it wherever they can make it. But that approach doesn't. You're better off with a cooperative approach, because that same sub can say, "Hey, there's a way to save money here," and your clients appreciate it and everything else. But it allows you to do more profitable stuff.
Yeah, and the subs, it's like you said,
They're great.
they're experts.
Yeah.
Sometimes in our industry, they're the most underutilized, resource.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Especially if you have that kind of that mentality that you're antagonistic with them, but we're this, you're that. But if you do take that cooperative approach, I think it makes life easy for you. Why would you not want to do it that way?
So,
I think at the end of the day, you're in the people business. And I think that was something that Tim brought up a long time ago and stuck with me when he said it. We all have our expertise and we all take care of each other. And I think at Chasse, as a group, we've always believed that, like, if we can do construction well, and we can treat our partners well, and we can do a cohesive, or we can take a cohesive approach to building a building and kick it out of the park and do whatever, we can give back to our communities. And we have that chance and that ability to give back to the communities we work in, the schools that we build, and so that's what's been really amazing about our culture and the culture that Barry built, and that we truly try to live out as employees, or actually team owners, because we're employee owned now.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
That whole ESOP thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
That's the real beautiful part of it, and so we have great team members like Tim and our field team and our subcontractors, and we promote treating each other well and supporting each other in that, so that we can all be successful to give back.
So how many, because you are basically a group of supervisors, you don't have lots of, labor or whatever, how many people are in the organization?
We have about 225
Wow.
Yeah.
people.
That's a lot. So, because I self-perform everything, right? And we have about 225 people, but the difference is you guys can, you're managing, for every person you have, you're probably managing 50 to 100 people. So if we look at it from that standpoint, your imprint is significantly more. The amount of work and the amount of volume of work you do has got to be significantly more. So it's it's a different approach to contracting. It's all contracting's it's the same, but it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of grew up in this industry, and I kind of watched the way it's changed, and it's like what Taylor was saying is we're all about partnership. And so sometimes I joke, if somebody stands in one spot too long, we'll partner with them. But we look at everybody who's on our job as our partners, from the guy who's sweeping the broom.
Yeah,
And-
it's a great approach.
And back in the day, you'd have a superintendent on the job and he ruled with an iron fist.
Right.
But it's different.
No trust.
People are different nowadays. And
Yeah.
and we just find, you can catch more flies with honey than with...
Just good conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, just the ability to communicate and take people's experiences into account, and just like we're doing here with Harvesting Wisdom. You guys have, wisdom that you bring to the table that's worth talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's at the end of the day. So, have you finished with all your Christmas parties? Do you do a Christmas party?
We do at Chase. We do ours because we're built. Our whole slogan is we're built different on purpose. And so Barry has always been like, we're going to be different. We're not going to do a 10-year anniversary. We're going to do an 11-year anniversary or whatever it is.
So he's
our
eccentric.
holiday party is always in like February or March. So we always do it after the holidays because we're all so busy during the holidays. So it's kind of fun to
interesting.
reconnect as a group and reconnect as a team and do something.
Yeah. I do reviews
Post-holiday.
and bonuses later because I don't want to tie it in. People get kind of emotional and drama ridden in this time of the year, So I changed that up a little bit, but so that's an interesting approach that you have. So my concept with schools is the same thing as it is with parks, because I've done some schools in the past. It's not our forte, but I've also done lots of community parks and that kind of thing. And we had a big community garden downtown Phoenix. And so my thought or my dream or the way I think about it is to take a school. And so the STEM garden is kind of a Trojan horse for us to get into that school, right? And we don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to make money off the school. What I want to do is put a garden or a STEM lab in every school in Arizona. That's the goal, to put it just like Bill Gates with a computer on every desk. And you know what? I don't know if the computer in every home actually produced a better society or not, but that's real questionable. But I think a garden would.
Oh, absolutely.
In every home or every school. And then the concept that I have is kind of the slogan is to take a school and turn it from an institutional setting to a park light setting. So, and this is kind of the concept. It's like another advanced way of looking at sustainability, because I've landscaped for 4 decades, and my concept is native stuff is okay because it's native, right? The soils are natural and the plants that grow there are natural. So putting native in is okay. Although some native stuff is thorny, so it doesn't necessarily blend that well around the playground area or whatever. But then roses, it's the same concept. Roses are medicinal, but a rose is a sustainable plant. It lasts 100 plus years. So that's an easy one, and it gives you that color impact. You know, the term xeriscape was just to give people kind of that lush feel, and that could be artificial turf or whatever.
Right.
But then grass to me is something you only have in playgrounds because it's not an edible product. So other than that, everything we put in, I'd rather see fruit trees and shrubs, whether they're medicinal or they're herbs or they're perennial or they're annuals, shrubs, and then the gardens themselves at that point can be smaller because the entire campus now has been converted to a kind of a farm or a profitable farm. And it is, I don't know if your landscape subs ever say this to you, but all that money that goes into a school, they run out of money by the time the landscaper gets there.
Oh, yeah.
And the landscapes are so pitifully ugly. You know, they put, first of all, granite everywhere, which is a great way to bake the soil, right? And then overdo the grass because they don't know what else to do, so you're wasting water. And then they'll put in small trees that are not even, they're not native, they're not edible or whatever. So kind of my Trojan horse is to say, you know what, let's get into that school and let's start converting. You know, there's so many open spaces in these schools too.
Yeah.
My God, we could put in a full-fledged farm in a school.
You speak my language.
You know,
You
that's
speak my
well,
language.
you're a master gardener. We didn't talk about that. So what got you into that? Are you from Arizona? Are you from?
No, I'm from Wisconsin.
Oh,
So
okay.
you could literally throw a seed on the ground and it'd grow.
So I got to protect my cheese on that board there?
No, you're fine. You're fine. I've had enough cheese to last a lifetime. No, I just think it's beautiful when you go into a space, and I was talking to Joe about this earlier. Just native plants, they've adapted to the landscape. They've adapted to the weather. They take less water. They attract pollinators.
Sure.
You know, it's just it sounds like a no-brainer, but people don't think about it.
They don't get it. Yeah,
They don't get it, yeah.
We are. There's only I don't know if there's anybody left besides us, but maybe 2 contractors left that do native salvage. So we call it devegetation, and then we put it back in. We call it revegetation. So we did, I would say the landscapes in North Phoenix, I would say that we definitely did, whether it's a subdivision or a streetscape, or if it's a commercial area, or if it's a park or a resort, a golf course. We've done definitely our share of that. I drive that area and I can point to one big subdivision or one big roadway after another and say, we pretty much, in my mind, I landscaped the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it had to do with an evolution of understanding how that environment, that ecosystem worked, and how you put things back, how you can save money. And at first, like I have one client, I guess I can say, Del Webb, when we first started, we did Terra Vita, and they contacted me and they said, we want this to look like Sun City. And I was like, oh my God, why would you ever want that? And we were doing Sun City too, but I was like,
You're like, not my cup of tea.
so I kind of talked to the board guys and I said, you know what? I think you're going to find that if you go with a native landscape here, that you're going to have more demand for your product. And within a few months after we did like the first infrastructure stuff and the models, they had people camping out and they had 6-month waiting list. They kept jacking their prices up throughout. And then they did come back to me and said, you know what, you were right. You know what? And on top of it, their landscape was way cheaper. You don't need all that granite. You don't need all that turf, or you don't have to spend that money on water, because you can actually turn a native landscape into back into a native landscape where you're almost not watering at all. So the native stuff is like kind of how we built our business. That's kind of our business model. But now it's it's in addition to that, we do food because we're in an urban environment and, people don't know where their food comes from. They
Yeah.
don't know how to grow stuff. And
Connection
then
is lost.
and there's that great opportunity to take all these things, these STEM concepts, and this gives you an outdoor venue that you can do like as a laboratory. So that's that, and I'm sure you've been talking to Joe, so he's probably talked your ear off. So how are you guys going to be involved with doing? I think he said you guys are doing a garden, or you're going to get involved. I think he's got a big thing coming up.
Very excited
That
about
is
it.
really cool to look at. And I did the community garden at Agave Farms. It was 17 acres, and I learned how to do everything the wrong way. I think I blew like $3 million on that thing. And
Gardening is a ongoing lesson in life. You can make a mistake over and over and over again, and no matter how seasoned you are or how much you know, you don't know everything in gardening.
Sure.
It's a constant lesson, and I think that's the cool part
well,
of it.
the other part of it though is that when you have, if you have an area or a campus or whatever, there's things you need, right, for
Right.
the infrastructure. You need, drainage for the water, and you need usually streetscape of some sort. You need parking, you need shade structures, you need water fountains, you need bathrooms. You got all that in schools already. So now it allows you to take just a section of land, and I will challenge any architect or any landscaper to say that it's more cost effective to put in an acre garden than it is to put in a playground or a big grass park with a bunch of non-native trees and that kind of thing. That you can do it more cost effectively, but you can engage that community, and it's not just the community at large, but it's the community at the school that we work with. So it's the lady in the cafeteria, or the guy who runs the computer lab, or it could be anybody involved with that school to do what they're doing. And I love the idea of, because I'm big, that's why we got the politicians on here, because I'm big about doing this in parks. It makes no sense to me. Some of the parks I've installed, or I go back to 20 years later, they're like, nobody shows up. I mean, you got the crackheads in there, or you got whatever, and there's not a lot of engagement with the community, but they spend a lot of money, and now they're spending a lot of money on maintenance. And so parks are a perfect way to put gardens in, because again, they have the bathrooms, they have the streets, the parking lot, and everything else. So that's part of the cool thing.
Yeah.
But the idea of engaging more with some of the policymakers and some of the people at these schools, and then with general contractors or architects, for me, it's a big thing, because if you really think about it, how much excess do you have putting in? Now, you're going to tell me that, I remember my father talking about bricklayers, if you're a good bricklayer, you only have one brick left at the end of the job. That's not reality. So, a lot of times there are excess materials, or you have a contact that, maybe they put in a play structure at the school, and now that play structure was, damaged somehow. They're not going to accept it, or whatever it may be. It allows us, if we have partnership, to put in better gardens. So we have the starter garden, and the reason we do have the starter garden is because schools just don't have their mentality. We don't have it in our budget. But meanwhile, they have landscape maintenance going on that costs them a fortune, especially if they design it, poorly. And you have the initial install of a landscape. So to me, it's like, we're putting in gardens that are like $5,000. And I'm thinking in terms of, well, there's no reason not to put in a garden that just does more. Sensory gardens. You can put in shade trees. You can put in benches, wash racks. There's a lot of different things you can do. We started providing like microscopes, which is really kind of cool, because now with the microscopes, you can plug it into your monitor or your TV, and you can take the soil and that they've composted out there, and you can take the regular soil or the dirt on the property, put it through the slide compared to what's in the soil that the kids have just made and amended. And now all of a sudden you see all these microorganisms, moving around, and you explain to them this is the building block of life.
Yeah.
And so in a soil, I think of composting or soil production or landscaping. Not so much landscaping, but gardening is what we do for our own bodies, right? So you need iron and you need, all potassium and all these things. That comes from the soil if you take care of the soil. If you have regenerative or sustainable practices, that goes into your body. And that whole concept of the food web and where we sit in the food web is like a big, big lesson for kids and for them to understand that if you take that carrot and you brush it off or wash it off and eat it, it's got 70% more nutrition than if you get it at the most expensive organic market in town. Because within 24 hours, the nutrient value goes.
It's gone. Yeah.
Right? So there's so much science or lessons behind what we're doing. And I like the idea of working with the contractors because I think like if somebody came up to me as a landscaper on a project and said, hey, can you put this in? Would you do that at your cost or would you do it for free? I'd be sure all day long. We'd put in, what do you want, a concrete header around the planters or whatever it may be, or just using the equipment for a little bit to do something. So the idea of building a team or a partner is, really is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I look forward to the future collaboration we have with you guys and, your master gardening skills. We'll put them to the test and, see if we can create something that's pretty cool.
I believe.
Especially with that. And I think he's got one school that he talked about that's wide open. It's an international school with, 200 kids from all over the world or whatever. And it's like, okay, now we can do something that's kind of special because we need some gardens for people to say, oh, wow, you can do that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the concept. So
It's all
anyway, Chasse Building Team, what's the website?
It's just Chasse, CHASSE.us. You can look it up online. And
And we'll splice in post. I think he calls it post editing. Some of the stuff that you guys have. If you have any of your stuff that's cool, lead stuff that you're doing, or pictures of, you working with the subs, things like that, or just the website and your logo and that kind of thing. We'll pop it in here too, so that people know who you are and what we're doing. Cool. So, but I appreciate the time you took today, and I'm glad I got all your names straight.
Yeah, you did great. You did great.
They inundate me today, and I've had too much of the wine. But so I really appreciate you guys coming. I love the passion that you guys are bringing into your work, and you guys deserve the success that you're having over at Chasse.
Thank you.
So
You guys do too.
my guests today, Taylor Perkins and Tim Goyette.
You had
Goy-
it right the first time.
What is Goyette? Is that a French name or
Yeah,
is
it's
it
French.
French name? Okay, great. Yeah, I've brought in a bunch of kids that graduate from agriculture school. It's kind of their secondary school over there. They decide they don't want to go into whatever, 4-year college or whatever. So they go into this agriculture stuff, and I bring them here, and they're a ton of fun to work with. But we grow.
They probably drink all your wine.
No, here's the thing: they drink beer. These young kids
really?
drink beer, and I
Oh
say,
yeah, it's a huge thing.
This is an absolute horrible, horrible thing that you can't admit. And I'm going to call your parents and tell them, is what you're French and you're drinking beer. You're not even drinking wine. And, the first time you worked on a vineyard was in my vineyard in the middle of the desert. How weird is this world getting? So, but anyway, I appreciate you guys coming, and I have
Thank
a little
you.
parting gift, and
Thank you.
it's a bottle of the wine that we're
I'm
making.
so excited. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you my basil salt too. So I'll trade you.
Okay.
Can we just get, have you ask one quick question of the projects we're collaborating with?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 Which one is the Alhambra one?
It's the newcomer school, but
Newcomer school.
you were at the Sunland Senior
Sunland.
Academy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just splice right into that, and he can cut that part out. But okay, so we're starting to collaborate
Yes.
with you guys on a few projects, some of which are coming up that are like super cool. I'm super excited with. What are the projects that you guys have started working with? And are you guys? Some of them you're not even building the school, right?
Well, yeah, Joe, I've known Joe for a long time, and we've done a lot of work in Levine together. But we are working on Sunland, which is a school we're rebuilding. But he didn't even know that when we reached out,
Oh,
when
it's
he
just
reached
a
out about it. So it
coincidence.
was just coincidental, yeah. And then the newcomer school he had just reached out about was the one you were talking about that just had exponential opportunity.
Huge campus and everything.
So
yeah.
cool. So he's pulled us into that, and I can't wait to bring the team in and work on whatever is needed for that.
Yeah, it's cool. We
Great
can get, and
opportunities.
we can. I think part of it is team building. So there's a lot of companies that want to come to us and say, we need team building efforts, and you'd be surprised if you got like a handful of subs or a handful of employees that come into a project, even for as little as 2 or 3 hours, how much we can get done. It's like amazing, how many hands can, and really these gardens are so simple to put in. They're not,
Yeah.
they're so cost effective. That's why I think a garden in every school. Okay, question for you.
Yeah.
Basil salt, how do you do it?
Super easy. I just grab a ton of basil from my garden and I put it in a blender with salt. I blend it and I bake it for
Like a kosher salt? Or no, just regular salt?
just like I do like a Celtic salt.
Okay.
And then I throw it in the blender and I blend it and I bake it for 30 minutes.
So you have to bake it. What's the baking process? What's that all about?
It's just to dry out the basil because the basil's fresh from my garden. And
got
so
it,
I put it
got
in the blender with the salt and I
Yeah,
blend
you don't
it,
want mold or something growing.
spread
so you
it,
get.
dry it out, and then I package it and it's done.
And so this
Delish.
is used as table salt. You can put it on any dish, or where do you?
Thing. I like to use it in anything I'd put basil in because it has a strong basil taste. So
Yeah.
any pasta dishes, eggs, I love it on eggs. I love it on like tomatoes and mozzarella.
I can't. This is the one advantage I
Delicious.
have is that I have a lot of people who work for me, or a lot of people I know, are constantly giving me jarred. I've got some amazing, like a guy who works for me does all of our irrigation and water management, and he gives me both from his farm and his father. He's from Nebraska, so he gives me jars of like tomato that he pureed
Yeah.
for salt, for tomatoes, like spaghetti sauces and stuff. But he'll do peppers and he'll pickle them, or jalapenos and all kinds of different things. And I get that. That's the one advantage I have is that, and I didn't have to go through all the work for it.
Yeah.
Although the work is fun.
The best stuff comes out of the garden, always.
Absolutely.
Always.
One of the things I do with basil, and we will finish because we can keep talking forever.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we did was we made, my daughter grows out of our garden system in Tucson for the last 4 years, and she'll grow basil plants, and then she makes like a pesto.
Oh yeah.
Right, so she'll take it, she'll throw it in with olive oil and whatever else is in pesto, and then you get it in a liquid form, and she puts it in a freezer mold, puts it in the freezer, and then you cut these little cubes, and she'll pop these cubes into a baggie, and then anytime she wants to cook, somebody comes over, and she can easily grill some chicken or whatever, and or make a pasta, and just throw that right on it, and it's amazing.
The best tasting ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things we're doing, I'm going to keep going. This is the last thing, I promise. We just put in this huge solar dryer in Malawi, and it's a slab of about 6 by 9 feet, give or take, of concrete, and then it looks like a teepee tent with a chimney on it. This big thing, and then we slide trays of fruits and vegetables, leafy greens, and whatever. And it takes anywhere from a day to 2 days for it to dry. Put it in baggies, and it's good for a year. So one of the problems a gardener comes up with is if you grow like 100 different plants, I can't even recognize, well, what the heck is that? Is that a tomato? Is that an onion? Whatever. I mean, there's so many different things popping up. And then you got to be in your garden every single day to get what's ready and what's ripe. Most gardeners get to a point where they're only growing 5 or 6 variety at a time. But then let's just say you get, celery in there, right? And how much celery could you possibly eat when you go to harvest it?
Yeah.
So the idea is to be able to dry it. In Africa, electricity is at a premium because the grid basically doesn't work.
Right.
So you can't put stuff in freezers and expect it to be good. It's actually more dangerous putting it in a freezer, right? So sun drying it is a great thing. And I want to bring one of those over here. It's just the cost of shipping it is the same cost as me building it. But I want to bring it here and then have some of the kids in the engineering department, maybe at ASU or in the STEM labs here, come up with a way of value engineering that and figuring out how to build that with local resources. Because, it's basically just opaque plastics that are baking it. But now you have the ability of really preserving food completely natural for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a cool thing. So I could keep going on one
We're
tangent
lucky.
after
we
another.
live in an oven. I mean, Arizona, we live in a freaking oven. So
That's true. So it'll
most
dry like
summertime,
that,
it's
right?
easy.
But you
It's
don't
easy.
grow a lot of vegetable in the summer. A little bit.
I do.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you get your squashes and a few other things.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff is growing fall and spring. And that's the stuff we want to be able to preserve, whether it is. And I can tell you, the stuff in Africa that they do is just like really delicious.
Oh, I bet.
It's like you can still taste all the flavor and everything else, and it holds its own. So
So cool.
one of the things one of the many little projects, but we need a large enough project to pull some of these little projects in that we're trying to do: composting, vermicomposting, blending. Doing larger scale tomato gardens and things like that. So, the people can really see how you would do things. I'm not going to say commercially, but on a larger scale, than you would normally do in a tiny little planter like this at your house. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anyway, I appreciate my guests today. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Tim and Taylor for coming, and I'd love to have you back on as we start building more stuff out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the wine.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Like, share, and subscribe for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for additional resources and visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey. Until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.